Hi, my name is Bradley Hart. I'm a New York City-based visual artist, born and raised in Toronto, Canada, and I work with bubble wrap. For about 10 years now, people have been asking me since I started, how did I come up with the idea of working with bubble wrap, and why bubble wrap of all things would I choose to use as a medium? And the truth is, when I originally started doing this, it was to play with the cultural trope on whether or not you should touch art or not. And that came about from a leftover roll of bubble wrap that was left in my studio after my first solo exhibition in New York in 2009, and a bunch of experiences with overzealous security guards leading up to that moment where they were telling patrons in museums not to touch the art, specifically when they were nowhere near even coming close to it. And I was looking at this roll of bubble wrap in my studio and I had that aha moment. And in that moment I said, I want to play with the cultural trope on whether or not you should touch art or not. People have talked about whether you should touch art in galleries or museums for decades, but bubble wrap, what I coined the quintessential dumb material, definitely would be the statement of all statements about not touching art. Bubble wrap was invented originally to be wallpaper, and I was like, wow, this is even more perfect than I could have imagined to be a medium to house and to carry my art in. So one of the very first pieces I made when I came up with the idea of working in bubble wrap was literally to take the bubble wrap, I stretched it over a wooden frame, I put it on the wall, and I called it Serving My Creator's Intended Purpose. And that was the idea of playing with that cultural trope on whether or not you should touch art or not, and at the same time, conceptually dealing with the material in the way that I think it begs to be dealt with. The very first thing I started to do was pick the images that I wanted to immortalize, as I say, in the bubble wrap. Once I pick the image, I go through an arduous process of deconstructing the color palette I'm going to use for it. And then I go through a more pleasurable but time-consuming process of doing the work in the computer. You see, when I first started, I actually stood in front of the canvas, or bubble wrap for that matter, and injected a few bubbles, stood back about 10, 15 feet, looked, imagined what it needed to look like, and went back to the canvas, the bubble wrap, and injected some more. Realizing how long that was going to take, by the time I got to my second painting, I wrote a computer algorithm, which allows me to recreate bubble wrap on the computer and colorize it there, create maps for myself to then use when I go do the actual final piece. Once I've got to that point, what I start doing is preloading the syringes. That could take anywhere from 3 to 5 days to load anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 or more syringes of up to 116 different colors. Once all the syringes are loaded into what I call my syringe wall, which I keep behind me as I'm working, that's when I go through the process of starting one by one, injecting each bubble of the thousands and thousands and thousands of bubble to create this work of art. So 2020 was a tough year for me, obviously for everyone due to COVID and whatnot, but the fact that I live with multiple sclerosis and I'm immunocompromised, I actually didn't get to come into the studio really until the better part of or even latter part of 2020. So it wasn't until July, August, maybe even September that I finally got back into the studio. And it's interesting, I closed the year off by doing 2 modern icons, 2 people in the world that unfortunately we lost last year. And you can actually see the paintings behind me, the Kobe Bryant and the RGB.